The oldest inhabitant asks to be forgiven for stating what is not strictly true, as her own memory has been solely relied on for dates and circumstances. Much of what she shares was learned in the earliest stages of childhood and may naturally be somewhat vague and shadowy. From me, but Lynchburg has had plenty of notables who didn't live here, but visited often enough to be known well by its citizens. Thomas Jefferson comes to mind, and that one time Britney Spears dated that guy in Appomattox. Another such notable, Daniel Sheffey, was actually a native of Frederick, Maryland, but considered himself to be full-blooded Dutch. In his youth, he left home and walked to the town of Stanton, Virginia, about 145 miles away. Yes, you heard that right. We can immediately tell if someone is from here by how they pronounce Stanton and Buena Vista. Oh, and because of the business of walking away from his home and family, you can imagine that young Daniel wasn't happy being an apprentice shoemaker to his father. So, with only his shoemaking tools and tenacity to support him, Sheffey eventually became one of the most distinguished lawyers in the state of Virginia, in addition to a U.S. congressman. He was described by contemporaries as novel and original, sometimes as a genius. I imagine he was like an 18th century John Grisham character, only with 100% more personality. So let's just picture Matthew McConaughey if he was actually a lawyer, all right? All right. For some years, Mr. Sheffey was a visitor of Lynchburg in the months of May and October, at which time Judge Creed Taylor held his chancery courts. I'm sure my producer will work his magic to put the definition of chancery on the screen, but I'll save him a little trouble. Chancery courts are what we might call an equity court today. It settles disputes and issues with the principles of equity and not the law. Anything that would not require damages as a judgment would go to a chancery court. This form of justice was a holdover from the British system of government before the Revolutionary War. Most states rolled their chancery courts in with the court of law, though the good old Dominion kept this system until 2006. So, anyway, in October of 1830, during the last sitting of the old Chancery Court in Lynchburg, Mr. Sheffey was, as usual, in attendance. His health appeared perfect, foreshadowing, and his brother lawyers had never before known his mind to be more active and astute. And knowing that the same band would probably never all again assemble in the good old Hill City, there was amongst them a peculiarly kind feeling, amounting in some instances to a touching, marly demonstration of regret. Green Day put it best. So take the photographs and still frames in your mind, hang it on a shelf in good health and good time. I hope you had the time of your life. As the hour approached when they must forever leave a scene endeared by past recollections, the party adjourned to the Franklin Hotel, then at the corner of 10th and Main, to spend the evening. And when the fraternity parted after a heart-warm fondue, which I like to imagine was either a heartfelt round of Danny Boy or Semisonic's closing time, Mr. Sheffey with several other gentlemen retired to his apartment. In the night he awakened Mr. Peachy Gilmer, telling him that he had the most distressing dream. Yes, Peachy was his given name, and no, he wasn't a character in Guys and Dolls. Mr. Gilmer told him that there was no reliance to be placed in dreams, and the impression at the time was that it was Mr. Gilmer, though it may have been another member of the bar, persuaded Mr. Sheffey to compose himself again to sleep. You remember that scene in Airplane where everyone stood in line to smack that hysterical woman? It makes the most amazing reaction gif. Anyway, in less than an hour, Mr. Sheffey again awakened his friend, saying that the same distressing dream had returned to him, and he would now recount it to his friend. After Mr. Gilmer pretended to care, he told Mr. Sheffey to go ahead. So Daniel Sheffey said, I dreamed that I was on my way to Stanton, in which case the word dream is used loosely, and that I stopped for a time at my farm in Augusta, some miles from my home. Because in the 19th century, folks were lawyers and farmers, but couldn't practice both from the same location. He continued, I was sitting by the door of the farmhouse when I saw a very singular appearance in the clouds, which floated on the air till the apparition was so near as for me distinctly to see and recognize the features of my beloved wife, who, with a mournful countenance and deep solemn voice, waved her hand to me, saying, Farewell, we have parted never again to meet on earth. At this point, Peachy Gilmer probably felt real guilty about rolling his eyes behind his friend's back and the snide remarks he had made about the Care Bear countdown. This morning, light finally dissipated. The somber feeling produced by the vision also dissipated. Mr. Sheffey eventually took his leave back to Stanton, stopping at his farm in Augusta along the way. Apparently, Daniel never read Shakespeare because the series of events screams of foreboding signs in the marketplace. In less than 3 days from leaving Lynchburg, the intelligence was received that Mr. Sheffey had died very suddenly at his farm in Augusta, never again beholding his happy home and devoted family in Stanton. Hey, surprise! Now, some may dispute the timeline presented here, as the last Chancery Court in Lynchburg was held in October, but Daniel Sheffey died in December. I'd say to those Debbie Downers and those nitpicking Nancys that this is the sort of discrepancy that is exactly what the disclaimer is for, so don't at me on Twitter. But that's none of my business.